My name is Ava, and this is the story of how I learned that even the strongest love can fall apart in silence. When I first met Alex, it wasn't one of those movie moments where time stops or the world fades away. It was simple, real. We met at a local coffee shop downtown, both reaching for the same cinnamon roll. He laughed, let me have it, and ended up buying another for himself. Somehow we ended up sharing a table, talking for hours about things that didn't matter. Music, college memories, favorite pizza toppings. But when I left that day, something inside me whispered, "This one feels different." And it was... In the months that followed, Alex became my person. We fell into a rhythm so natural it felt like we'd known each other forever. Morning coffees turned into weekend hikes, and Sunday walks by the river became our quiet ritual. He was calm where I was anxious, patient where I was impulsive. We didn't need constant words. Sometimes just being next to each other felt enough. I still remember those quiet evenings by the water. The city lights would shimmer on the river's surface, and Alex would hold my hand like he was holding a promise. He'd say things like, "Ava, I don't know what the future looks like, but I wanted to have you in it." And I believed him. We talked about marriage casually at first, then more seriously. His family liked me, or at least that's what I thought. His mom would smile. His dad would ask about my work. And his sister even told me once that Alex seemed happier than she'd ever seen him. It felt like we were building something unshakable. Then life shifted. It started with a phone call I'll never forget. I was at work, halfway through an email, when my mom's voice cracked through the line. "Ava," she said, barely holding it together. "Your sister. She's been diagnosed with cancer." The world blurred around me. The screen, the office noise, the hum of the air conditioner, all of it disappeared. I remember standing there frozen, until my coworker took the phone from my hand and told me to sit down. Everything changed after that. My days became a blur of hospital visits, doctor consultations, and long nights sitting beside my sister's bed. She tried to stay strong, joking that she didn't want me crying over her ugly hospital gown. But I could see the fear behind her smile. I barely slept, barely ate. And Alex, he tried to be there. At first, he really did. He'd bring coffee to the hospital, hold my hand when I cried, and even talk to my sister, trying to make her laugh. There were moments when I thought I couldn't survive another day, but he'd look at me and say, "You're not alone, Ava. I'm right here." I believed him then, too. But slowly, something began to shift. I noticed it first in the silences. The pauses that used to feel comfortable, but now felt distant. His texts grew shorter. Our calls fewer. He'd say, "Work's been crazy lately," or "Mom's been on my case again," and I'd nod, too tired to question it. I didn't realize it at the time, but grief doesn't just test your strength. It tests the people around you, too. One night, I told him I couldn't think about marriage right now. "My sister needs me," I said. "Everything else can wait." He nodded, quiet for a moment, then said softly, "I understand." I thought that meant we were okay. That he'd wait. That love like ours could survive a pause. But love isn't always as patient as we imagine. As the months passed, my sister's condition worsened. Watching her fade was like watching the color drain from my world. And in that slow heartbreak, I started losing Alex too. The man who once called every night began missing days without a word. The one who said he'd stand by me started standing somewhere else, just out of reach. Then came the day I lost her. It was early morning, the hospital room quiet except for the soft beeping of machines. I held her hand, whispered that it was okay to let go, that I'd be fine. But I wasn't fine. When her breathing stopped, it felt like part of me stopped too. The days that followed were a haze. Funeral arrangements, condolences, silence, And through it all, Alex wasn't there. He texted once saying, "I'm sorry, Ava, I'll come by soon." But he never did. Weeks passed. Then, one afternoon, I ran into a mutual friend at the grocery store. She looked at me with this strange expression, half pity, half hesitation. "Ava," she said slowly, "did you hear about Alex?" My heart stuttered. "What about him?" Her eyes softened. "His family arranged his marriage. It happened last weekend." For a moment, I thought she was joking. This had to be a mistake. Alex wouldn't just do that, not without even telling me. Not after everything we'd shared. But it was true. His family had chosen someone for him, a woman from their community, someone more suitable, as I later overheard from another friend. And Alex, the man who once promised to stand by me through everything, had quietly said yes. I didn't cry right away. I just stood there in that grocery store aisle, staring at a row of cereal boxes, wondering how love could end so quietly. How something that once felt eternal could vanish without a goodbye. Later that night, I opened my phone and scrolled through our old messages. The good mornings, the I miss you, the plans for someday. And I realized that someday was never coming. He never called, never explained, never even said he was sorry in person. And somehow that hurt more than anything else. The silence, the cowardice, the way he slipped out of my life like I was nothing but a chapter he'd finished reading. In the weeks that followed, I tried to convince myself that maybe it was for the best. That he was forced. That maybe he didn't have a choice. But deep down, I knew the truth. Love isn't about promises made when things are easy. It's about who stays when life gets hard. And Alex didn't stay. That was the moment I learned the hardest truth of all. Some loves only last until life tests them. And when it does, not everyone survives the test. I don't know what hurt more, losing my sister or realizing the man I loved chose silence over me. Maybe it was both. Maybe they blurred together until I couldn't tell where one pain ended and the other began. Weeks passed after I learned about Alex's wedding. Everyone told me to move on. My mom said, "People change, Ava. Maybe it just wasn't meant to be." But how do you unlove someone who once felt like home? How do you erase the warmth of hands that once held your whole world? I tried to keep living, going to work, pretending I was fine, telling friends I was doing better. But every time I saw a couple holding hands on the street, it felt like a reminder of everything I lost. Sometimes I'd walk by the coffee shop where we first met, and for a split second, I'd almost expect to see him there. Laughing, waiting, pretending nothing had changed. But the only thing waiting for me was the echo of what used to be. Then one morning, almost 2 months later, I got a message from Mia, a mutual friend who never knew when to keep things to herself. She wrote, "You heard about Alex, right?" My heart skipped. For a moment, I thought she meant something bad had happened to him. But then she added, "He left her. The girl his family made him marry, they're separated." I read those words over and over. He left her. I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Relief? Vindication? Maybe all of it, tangled together. I wanted to scream, "Of course he did. He was never supposed to marry her." And yet, part of me hated that even after everything, I still cared enough to feel anything at all. Later that week, Mia told me more. Apparently, his marriage barely lasted 2 months. His wife, ex-wife now, couldn't adjust to his life in the city. She went back to her parents, and soon after, Alex agreed to the separation. Just like that, it was over. I should have felt some kind of closure, but instead, a question burned in me. If he could walk away from her so easily, why couldn't he fight for me? That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment we ever had. The nights by the river, his promises, his soft laughter. He used to say, You and I, Ava, were unbreakable. But when life tested us, he shattered like glass. And yet, something inside me still whispered, maybe now. Maybe now he'll come back. Maybe now he'll remember what we had. It's pathetic, I know, hoping for the person who already left you. But love makes fools of us all. Days turned into weeks again. No message, no call. Then, out of nowhere, I saw his name. Not on my phone, but on social media. A photo. He was standing in front of a small chapel, dressed in a black suit, smiling. And beside him was a woman I'd never seen before. Someone new. Someone else. The caption read, "New Beginnings." My breath caught in my throat. He got married. Again. To someone completely different. It felt unreal. Like I was watching a stranger's life. Not the man who once said he couldn't imagine his future without me. He hadn't even given me the decency of an ending, and now he was living a whole new chapter with someone else. That night I broke. Not just from heartbreak, from disbelief, from the cruel irony of it all. He could have chosen me. He could have fought for us. He could have said no to his family, waited for me to heal, to come back. But instead, he married someone else. Twice. And somehow I was still here, stuck in the same story he walked out of long ago. I remember sitting by my window that night, the city lights blinking below, my heart aching in every possible way. I whispered to myself, it should have been me. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe I was too busy wishing for what should have been instead of accepting what was. Still, I couldn't stop wondering who she was. This new woman who replaced me. What did she have that I didn't? Did she know he once promised forever to someone else? Did she know that before her he had a love story he left unfinished? For weeks those questions haunted me. I tried to block them out, but grief doesn't leave quietly. It lingers, like smoke after fire, invisible, but choking you all the same. Then one afternoon, as I walked out of the grocery store, I saw him. Alex. He was standing by his car, talking on the phone. The same crooked smile, the same calm posture. But something about him looked different. Maybe it was the faint tiredness around his eyes, or maybe it was just me, realizing he wasn't the same man I'd loved. He saw me too. Our eyes met, and for a moment the world went still. He ended the call, hesitated, and walked over. Ava, he said softly. Hi! I wanted to scream. To ask him why. To demand how he could destroy everything and then just say hi like we were old classmates meeting by accident. But all I managed was, you got married again. He nodded, guilt flickering in his eyes. Yeah, I did. To someone you actually chose this time? I asked bitterly. He didn't answer. Just looked down. There was a long pause, heavy, awkward, painful. Then he said, almost whispering, I'm sorry for everything, Ava. I never meant to hurt you. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so empty. Sorry doesn't fix the fact that you left, I said. You let me fall apart while you built a new life. He sighed. I didn't know how to reach you after your sister. I thought you needed space. You thought wrong, I said sharply. I needed you. The silence stretched again. He opened his mouth, then closed it, like there were 1,000 things he wanted to say but didn't have the courage to. Finally he said, I hope you find peace, Ava. And just like that, he turned and walked away. No dramatic ending, no goodbye, just silence again. I stood there watching him fade into the distance, and for the first time I didn't cry. Maybe because something inside me finally understood. He wasn't the same Alex anymore. And maybe neither was I. Later that night, I opened my journal and wrote, He married twice, and I'm still mourning the first goodbye. Maybe love doesn't die. It just changes shape until you stop recognizing it. I closed the book and took a deep breath. For the first time in months, the ache didn't feel like a wound. It felt like a scar. And scars, as I was beginning to learn, mean you survived. It's strange how life has a way of circling back, almost cruelly. Just when you think you've finally moved past someone, the universe finds a way to place them right in front of you again. A month after that encounter with Alex, the awkward, painful conversation in the parking lot, I started to feel like I was finally breathing again. I was going to therapy, taking long walks, and even trying to make peace with the quiet in my apartment. Every day I told myself, "You're healing, Ava, one step at a time." But healing doesn't prepare you for the day your past moves into the apartment right across from yours. It was a rainy Saturday morning when I first saw him again. I had just come back from the grocery store juggling 2 heavy bags and my keys when the elevator doors opened. And there he was. Alex, carrying boxes. Looking exhausted. At first I thought I was imagining it. I blinked, then froze. He stared back, eyes widening slightly in disbelief. "Ava?" he said quietly. I wanted to laugh, to scream, to run. Anything but stand there in silence like time had stopped again. "What are you doing here?" I finally managed. He looked down, then gestured to the boxes. "Moving in." My chest tightened. "You're kidding." He shook his head slowly. "No. My wife and I just rented this place. Apartment 408. My heart sank. Because my door, the one I'd walked through 1,000 times in loneliness, read 407. The universe has a sick sense of humor. I somehow forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Of all the buildings in this city, you had to move here." He sighed. "I didn't know you lived here, Ava. I swear I didn't." I nodded numbly and brushed past him. The elevator ride up felt like an eternity. When the doors opened, he followed me out, both of us pretending this wasn't the cruelest coincidence imaginable. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to faint footsteps from the apartment across the hall. His apartment. Every sound, every door click, every muted laugh felt like an echo from a life I'd already buried. Days turned into weeks and pretending became harder. I'd see him in the hallway, sometimes with his new wife, a beautiful brunette named Claire. She'd smile politely, unaware of the history standing right beside her. Sometimes I'd see them arguing softly in the parking lot, his voice low, hers sharp, and every time I told myself it wasn't my business. Not anymore, but it hurt. God, it hurt, watching him live a life that could have been mine. Watching him walk past me with groceries or coffee, or a tired smile that used to belong only to me. The worst part was the mornings. Every day we'd leave for work around the same time. I'd lock my door, step into the hallway, and there he'd be, fumbling with his keys across the hall. "Morning," he'd say, like it meant nothing. "Morning," I'd reply, like it didn't. Sometimes our eyes met, and for a brief second I'd see something. Regret, maybe. Or sadness. Then it would vanish, replaced by polite indifference. But late at night, when the hallway was quiet and I'd hear faint music through the wall, I'd wonder if he ever thought about us. About what we had. About what we lost. One evening, the fire alarm went off in the building. A false alarm, thankfully. Everyone rushed downstairs. It was raining hard, the kind that soaked you in seconds. I stood under the awning, shivering, when Alex came out too. No umbrella, just a gray hoodie, dripping wet. He saw me, hesitated, then walked over. "You okay?" "Fine," I said, though my teeth were chattering. He looked at me for a moment, then took off his hoodie and draped it over my shoulders. I wanted to protest, but the warmth hit me before the words did. "Thanks," I whispered. He nodded. "Old habits, I guess." Something in his voice cracked, soft, tired, real. For a second, the world shrank back to just us again. Two people under the rain, both pretending they'd moved on when neither really had. The alarm stopped. People began heading back in. I handed him his hoodie. "You should go. Your wife might be looking for you." He hesitated, then said quietly, "She left." My head snapped up. "What?" He swallowed. 2 weeks ago. Things weren't working. She moved out. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to ask why. Part of me wanted to scream, of course she did. But instead, I just said softly, "I'm sorry." He nodded. "I'm not sure if I am." There was something raw in his eyes, a kind of exhaustion I hadn't seen before. For a fleeting second, I saw the old Alex. The one who used to laugh with me by the river. The one who promised forever. Then he looked away, and that moment vanished. Over the next few days, our paths crossed more often. A wave in the hallway. A short conversation by the mailbox. A shared elevator ride. It was small, ordinary, but it felt dangerous. Because with every accidental smile, every soft glance, I could feel the walls around my heart cracking again. And I hated it. One evening, I came home to find a small note slipped under my door. My heart jumped before I even unfolded it. It was in his handwriting. "I don't expect anything. I just wanted to say I still think about you, every day. I'm sorry for everything I ruined. You didn't deserve it." I sat there on the floor, the paper trembling in my hands. 1,000 emotions hit me at once. Anger, sadness, longing, disbelief. He was right there, across the hall, and yet it felt like he was a world away. I didn't reply. Not that night. Not the next. But the silence between us grew heavier, like the air itself was holding its breath. And somewhere deep inside, a question began to whisper again. One I thought I'd buried long ago. What if this time it's not too late? I stared at that note for hours. The ink had smudged slightly at the corner, like he'd written it in a hurry, or maybe with shaking hands. "I still think about you every day." The words looped in my head like a broken record, refusing to fade. I told myself I wouldn't respond, that it was too late, that nothing he said could undo the way he broke me. But the truth was, a part of me still needed answers, the kind only he could give. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing faint movements from the apartment across the hall, drawers closing, footsteps, the hum of quiet music. Finally, sometime past midnight, I stood up, walked to my door, and before I could talk myself out of it, I knocked. It took a moment, then the door opened. Alex stood there barefoot, wearing a gray t-shirt and sweatpants. He looked tired, not just physically, but like someone who'd been carrying too much for too long. "Ava," he said softly, surprised. I held up the note. "We need to talk." He stepped aside. "Yeah," I figured. The apartment was dim, half-unpacked boxes everywhere. The air smelled faintly of coffee and rain. I sat on the couch while he stood near the window, avoiding my eyes. "Why now, Alex?" I asked. "Why say all this now when it doesn't change anything?" He ran a hand through his hair. "Because I couldn't hold it in anymore. You deserve the truth." I felt my chest tighten. "Then say it. Why didn't you marry me? Why did you let them choose someone else for you?" He was quiet for a long time, staring out the window like he was searching for the right words somewhere in the dark. Finally, he turned back to me. "My mom," he said quietly. "She was sick, Ava. I didn't tell anyone." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" He took a deep breath. "Around the same time your sister got diagnosed? My mom was too. Heart failure. She didn't want anyone to know, especially not you. She said she couldn't handle the stress of another loss after Dad died. And then, when she found out you'd paused the wedding plans, she panicked. I blinked, trying to process. So she arranged your marriage? He nodded. She thought if she could see me settled, she could die in peace. She begged me, Ava. She cried. Said it was her last wish. My voice cracked. And you just said yes? He looked down. I tried to fight it at first, but she got worse. The doctor said she didn't have long. I thought, maybe if I agreed, she'd calm down. Maybe she'd have more time. He exhaled, pain etched into every line of his face. I thought I could fix everything later. That somehow you'd understand. I felt tears burning my eyes. Understand what, Alex? That you broke me to comfort your mother? That you watched me fall apart while you played dutiful son? He flinched but didn't look away. I didn't know she'd die before the wedding even happened. She passed a week before the ceremony. My breath caught. And you still went through with it. He nodded slowly. Because by then, everything was arranged. My dad said backing out would dishonor her memory. I was a coward, Ava. I didn't have the strength to say no. The room went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I could feel my heart pounding, angry, shattered, confused. I would have understood, I whispered finally. If you'd told me, if you'd just talked to me. He sat down across from me, his eyes glistening. I know, and that's what kills me every day. I thought I was protecting you from more pain. But all I did was cause it. I looked at him, really looked at him. The same man I once loved so deeply, sitting across from me now, drowning in his own guilt. For so long, I'd imagined this moment, the confrontation, the explanation, the apology. I thought it would make everything better. But it didn't. It just made the wound real again. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly. Ava, I never stopped loving you. Not for a second. I just didn't know how to love you and save everyone else at the same time. I pulled back, shaking my head. That's the thing, Alex. You didn't have to save everyone. You just had to choose me. And you didn't. He swallowed hard, tears finally slipping down his face. You're right. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Outside, the rain began again. Soft, steady, relentless. It tapped against the window like a memory that refused to fade. Finally, I stood up. You got what you wanted, Alex. You did what you thought was right. But you don't get to come back now and expect me to rewrite the ending. He stood too, desperation flickering in his eyes. I don't expect anything, Ava. I just needed you to know it wasn't because I didn't love you. It was because I loved too many people the wrong way. The words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. I took a shaky breath. You know what the difference between us is? When life broke me, I stayed. I faced it. You ran. He nodded slowly, tears streaking his face. I know, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. There was nothing left to say. I walked to the door, hand on the knob, when I heard him whisper behind me, barely audible, but enough to stop my heart. If there's ever another lifetime, Ava, I'll choose you first. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of everything we'd been through. The love, the pain, the timing that never worked. Then I turned the handle and walked out, closing the door softly behind me. Back in my apartment, I stood by the window, watching the lights from his side flicker through the rain. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. Just sadness, deep, quiet, human sadness. Maybe love wasn't meant to be fair. Maybe it was just meant to teach us. And Alex had taught me everything. About holding on, about letting go, and about the kind of strength that comes from surviving both. That night, I wrote in my journal again. Sometimes the reason hurts more than the silence. But at least now I know. He didn't leave because he stopped loving me. He left because he didn't know how to stay. The rain hadn't stopped since I left Alex's apartment. It fell in heavy sheets, turning the city into a blur of silver and shadow. I should have felt lighter. After all, I finally had the answers I'd been searching for. But something inside me was restless, uneasy, like a piece of the puzzle still didn't fit. I stood by my window staring at the parking lot below, and then I saw him. Alex. Sitting on the curb beside his car, drenched in rain, his head buried in his hands. The sight hit me like a wave. He looked lost, completely. For a few minutes I just watched, torn between walking away or walking back. But something about the way his shoulders trembled pulled me down there before I even realized what I was doing. By the time I reached the lot, my shoes were soaked and my breath came out in shaky clouds. He didn't even notice me at first. I walked closer and said softly, "You'll catch a cold out here." He looked up slowly, eyes red, face wet. From rain or tears, I couldn't tell. "Ava," he whispered, voice breaking. "You should have stayed inside." I crossed my arms, the rain pouring harder around us. "And let you sit out here drowning in guilt? Not my style." He gave a weak, bitter smile. "I deserve it." "Maybe," I said quietly. "But you don't get to hide from the rest of it either." He frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. "I get it, Alex. You married the first woman because of your mom. You wanted to give her peace before she died. But what about the second one?" My voice cracked slightly. "She wasn't your mother's choice. That was yours." "Why her, Alex? Why not me?" The question hung in the rain like thunder waiting to break. He looked away. That same look he used to have when he was caught lying about something small. My heart sank. "Don't you dare lie to me again," I said sharply. "Not now." He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. "Ava, I can't. Tell me," I demanded. "You owe me that much." The silence stretched until I thought he wouldn't speak at all. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Because she was pregnant." I froze. The rain seemed to stop for a second. Or maybe it was just the world inside me that went still. I stared at him, disbelief flooding through me. "What did you just say?" He closed his eyes. "After my first marriage ended, I got involved with someone for a short time. It wasn't serious. I was broken, trying to forget everything. Then she told me she was pregnant. Her name was Claire." He looked up at me, rain dripping down his face like tears. "I married her because I thought it was the right thing to do." My knees felt weak. "And the baby?" He swallowed hard. "She lost it. A few weeks later, a hollow laugh escaped my lips. So you married her out of guilt, too?" He said nothing, just stared at the ground. I felt anger rise in me like fire. Not the hot, reckless kind, but the deep, trembling kind that comes from years of being lied to. "All this time," I said, my voice shaking, "you let me believe fate tore us apart. That it was bad timing or family pressure or grief. But it wasn't fate, was it? It was you. You did this." "Ava, no," I snapped. "You made every choice. You chose to stay silent. You chose to marry someone else again. You chose everyone except me." He stood suddenly, desperation in his eyes. "I didn't want to drag you into my mess. You'd already lost so much. I didn't want to ruin your life, too." I laughed bitterly through tears. "You did that anyway, Alex. Not by being honest, but by leaving me in the dark." He took a step closer, rain pouring between us. "I never stopped loving you. You have to believe that." I shook my head slowly. "Love isn't the point anymore. You loved me, but you lied to me. You loved me, but you betrayed me. You loved me, but you never chose me." He froze, the truth cutting through him sharper than anything I could have said. We stood there in silence, the kind that feels final. The kind that says everything words can't. Finally, I took a deep breath and said quietly, "You know what the cruelest part is, Alex? I waited for you. I defended you. I built my life around the idea that you had no choice. But the truth is, you did. And you chose the easy way every time. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Just rain and regret. I stepped back, my voice steady now. You keep saying you didn't want to ruin my life. But you already did. Not by breaking my heart, but by making me doubt my worth. His face crumpled. Ava, please. I shook my head. No, Alex, you don't get to say my name like that anymore. And with that, I turned and walked away. Not fast, not angry, just done. Each step through the rain felt lighter than the one before, like I was finally walking out of the cage I'd built from his memory. When I reached the lobby, I looked back once. He was still there, kneeling on the wet pavement, head bowed, as if the weight of every lie had finally broken him. For the first time, I didn't feel pity. I felt peace, because I realized something I hadn't before. Closure doesn't come when they apologize. It comes when you stop waiting for the apology to change anything. That night, I packed my things. By morning, I was gone. The rain had stopped and the sun was rising, soft and golden, spilling through the clouds like forgiveness. As I drove away from the building, I didn't cry. I smiled. Not because I'd forgotten Alex, but because I finally understood that love doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes, real love means knowing when to let go, and choosing yourself instead. In my journal, my final entry read, "He was my almost, the love that taught me how to survive. He lied, he left, but in the end, he gave me something he never could have given while he stayed. Freedom." Some endings aren't tragedies. They're awakenings. And with that, my story, our story, finally ended. Not in heartbreak, but in clarity and peace.